Flosstube. My name is Becca, and I am SamBrie Stitches here on Flosstube and Instagram. And this is another special edition of Interview with a Flosstuber. Today, I feel very honored that I'm getting to spend some time with Barb. I'm sure many of you are familiar with her channel, Lost in Floss. She started that with her best friend, Leanne. Many of us have followed their stitching journey and their amazing friendship, and then our stitching community came together with a very amazing stitch along for the passing of Leanne. So Barb has continued recording and has done just an absolutely amazing job. She stitches beautifully. I enjoy listening to her and stitching along. And if you're not familiar with her channel, I will be putting links down below. And she's also Lost in Floss 2, the number 2, on Instagram as well, and that'll be linked down below as well. So how are you doing today, Barb?
Good. Thank you for the amazing intro. Holy cow.
Well, it was all true. It was all true. All right, so let's jump into the questions. The first one is, why did you start a floss tube, and were there any particular motivations?
It all started, let's see, both Leanne and I were, like we did some stitching years and years ago before, maybe even before we had kids or right when our kids were really little. And then we kept up with like a lot of other hobbies, but that one kind of got put by the wayside. And then I'd say, I don't know. Well, it started for me when I started stitching Christmas stockings for my grandchildren. So my granddaughter is 7, so probably, around that time. But I started back into it. And I think Leanne did a little bit too. And I just remember I think they were over for dinner one night, and the guys were in the other room watching some basketball game or football game or something. And we were just like, started looking at stuff online, and she was much more familiar with Flosstube than I was at that point. And so she started, she'd send me some links to people who she thought I might enjoy. And I remember looking at like some blogs and stuff like that. And then maybe half a year later, she stopped with her brother at our cabin, and we were sitting around, and she's like, I was thinking we should really do a floss tube. And, my thought was, I don't know, like I hadn't been back to stitching that long, but I'm like, well, it would be fun to get together. And that's kind of why we started it, more as an excuse to spend time together again and just have fun with it. And it kind of took off from there.
Yeah, that is a really great reason, just to spend more time together, and your friendship really, really came through in the videos. It very, very clear how close you guys were. So
well, and for me, it wasn't like I didn't have to prepare anything. Like I just showed up. She would have everything all nice. Organized, and I felt like she was always taking care of me. Like, I think that's one of the things that I'm like, oh, now I'm kind of on my own and I got to figure this out. But yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better friend, and someone so talented. It's just like, I'd get myself in a bind with how I should finish something, whether it was cross stitch or some other hobby, and she would always be the one like, well, did you think about doing it this way or whatever? And so yeah, there's a lot of things I miss, but that's a big one.
Having somebody to bounce those ideas off of. Yeah.
So and right before she got sick, thank goodness we got to meet some local people in our stitching community, and just to have someone like, do you have this floss, or which one do you like better, or someone that you can reach out to for those kind of stupid questions. I mean, I kind of feel like she established those relationships for me so that I'd be taken care of, after she was gone. So
she was thinking about you the whole time. That's great. And it's amazing to have even one other person to be able to bounce, ideas off of. I know here we have our local stitching group, and we have a chat group that we kind of just, chat in and bounce ideas off of each other. So I totally understand how important and how good that feels to have that.
Well,
So,
and especially like we don't have a LNS in our area, so it's like, I don't know. I think naturally you would, probably just go into the store and there'd be people there, but without having that, it's really
that makes it a lot more difficult for sure. So the next question is a subscriber question, and they were just wondering if you have a blog.
No blog.
No blog. It doesn't seem to be a very common thing anymore.
Yeah, well, this is kind of the replacement, I guess.
Yep,
so,
for sure.
And no one corrects your grammar, right?
Lots of typing. I don't know how some people do it. I know that people who have blogs say that they're not a lot of work, and then there are some that say that they are. So,
Right.
Yeah. So the next question is, how did you learn to stitch, and how long have you been stitching?
I don't really remember learning. I remember seeing my mom and my sister stitch like a gift for someone, and I'm like, oh, I had done like crewel and that type of stuff, and I think I probably just looked at, most of them were kits, and I probably just looked at the instructions and figured out the stitches. But I remember seeing my mom and my sisters cross stitch, and they were probably simple little things, and I thought, well, I really like how that looks. It looks so crisp and precise, and so I thought, well, I'll just try doing something. And I can't even, there were a few things I did back then, like more, I don't know. I think they would have been things from like the Cross Stitch magazine or something.
Okay.
And then I started doing Christmas stockings for my kids. So those were more major projects that I worked on back then.
Those Christmas stockings,
a
lot of them were full coverage. I remember like the kits that were out.
Yeah. Well, and the ones for my kids that I did are very simplistic compared to the ones that I'm doing for my grandchildren. And I feel like each one I do, I learn more, but I realize how far I can go yet as a stitcher. When I see like other people's versions of the same thing, I'm like, oh yeah. I'm always looking for hints.
Ever evolving learning, I think, is how stitching is. You start years ago, and I see that, I've evolved quite a bit and learned a lot too. So, yeah.
Well, I know, and it'll be funny because I'll just be looking at an Instagram story and someone will mention, like, oh, they separate bread or, stuff like that like I was struggling with. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, you just tap and pull. It's really easy.
Yeah. So this next question is one of my favorites, and it's, what is your favorite project or projects that you've stitched so far?
I've done a lot of seasonal things. When I started back, I guess that's kind of what I was drawn to, but I have actually 3 things. I hope that's
awesome. I love when people show stuff.
Just because it's kind of funny. So Leanne had this chart for this prairie schooler Christmas tree too, I think it is. And I had seen it, I don't know, on Instagram or something. And we were talking about like unicorn charts. And I'm like, oh, that's the one that I'd really like to stitch. And she's like, I think I have that. So, went up in her neatly organized craft room, and lo and behold, she had it. Well, I had seen these trees at Hobby Lobby, and of course, by the time I got there, all that was left was a broken off one. And I'm like, well, I'll take it anyways. But so then that's where the Santa hat came from. It
actually is cute. It works. So
and then it was funny because Leanne was shopping the next year at Hobby Lobby, and what did she find but the Santa, or the tree with the broken off tip? And so when she was buying it, a lady was like, the tip is broken off on that. She's like, yeah, I can make it work, no problem. So
very creative.
so, and then we had so much fun with this one. This was my oldest whip in the world, Pumpkin Patch.
Oh, wow.
So I started it probably in I think it was from a 1989 cross stitch magazine. And I had like a lot of the quilt done, and I had the scarecrow done, and some of the wording. But right here, there was a ginormous cat. And I don't know, I think the size of the cat always bothered me. And so that's why I didn't finish it. So I pulled it out when we started our channel up, and I'm like, I'm gonna finish that. And so we joked around about the cat so much, and Leanne's like, take the cat out. I'm like, yeah. And then of course we had a lot of people who didn't want me to take the cat out. And so on one of our episodes, Leanne actually takes her ripper and makes the first couple stitches.
Oh, I don't know if I saw that.
And so she actually was the one, then she stayed around after we were done recording and ripped the rest of it out. So, but then the funniest thing was after I got it all, it was all done, I was ready to finish it. I took it along with several other projects to like, I don't know, I was looking for fabric to back it with or a frame or something, and I lost it. And I was like calling stores and trying to find out, where I might have left it. And honestly, I really thought I left it at Hobby. And so I'm like, okay, I looked everywhere that I could, and it was a couple of videos that it was gone for. And the one video, it must have been, I don't know if it was around Christmas time, but I sat down at the table and Leanne has like a milk jug on the table. And I'm like, why does she have that out there? She could have some cookies or something. And then I look, and she had, she ran off a picture of Pumpkin Patch, and she had like a missing child thing on the container. Like, have you seen Pumpkin Patch Reward? So then in the end, it turned out I had taken some pictures of it for Instagram, and I had it propped up on a little, I don't know, cabinet. And I had looked underneath the cabinet, but when it fell behind, it got caught on the back of it. So until I was like in the corner on the side of it, I'm like, oh, it's Pumpkin Patch. So,
oh, geez.
Very long story about nothing.
But I love that pattern though.
Well, it's fun because now I know there's a couple people who reached out to me who are stitching it now, and it's fun to see something that can be timeless. Some of the charts just really stand the test of time, and then there's others that I probably did that
that you can tell it was from like the 80s or the 90s. Yeah.
Mauve and slate blue with the geese, and bowl. So, but then I have one more. This is my all-time favorite. This is Old Christmas Tree.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And it was fun. It was the first time I used Belle Soie and all one color floss, so that made it easy. But just to try to weave the color variegation in, it just was a fun stitch. And then I had this frame from Goodwill, which I am famous for, but it was like bright gold. And I sent a picture of it to Leanne, and she's like, oh, just try like darkening it up a little bit. And I'm so glad I did, because I really, really like it.
And who was that by again? I think I missed it.
All Through the Night.
All Through the Night? Okay. Yeah, that looked like that. Yeah, I'm also a Goodwill thrifter as well. It's the best place to find unique pieces and frames.
Right. I mean, I've gotten some really cool pieces, and at the time I don't even know necessarily how I'm going to use them. But then when I'm ready to finish something, I'm like, I'll go down into my basement, and Leanne would kid me because she's like, how many frames do you have down there? And one time I did count, and it's over 100, but like most of them have paid maybe $2 for, and you know, I just like when I'm ready and in the mood to finish something, just to be able to go down there and like pull things out.
Me
So,
too. Yep, 100%. And especially throughout this year with, you know, quarantine and lockdown and not
right,
being able to go into the stores, to be
right.
able to still go down to wherever you have your finishing stuff and
Mhm.
have your own shop, basically.
When I have this one sitting here because I just had a picture of it yesterday, but this was Leanne Stitch. But I had all this stuff like sitting around at home. So like I didn't have to go and shop for any of
Yep.
it. And I like being able to, when I get on the roll, because can't say I love finishing, but when I get in the mood to finish, then I want to do it all, all at once and get it over with. So
I do not blame you.
yeah. So, and it is kind of funny because, you know, both Leanne and I would talk about how we'd much rather stitch than finish. Although, like, we like the satisfaction of being able to finish something ourselves. So you know, I do chuckle a little bit thinking, you know, like she left this legacy of, you know, finished stitches to me to fully finish. So, you know, as I'm sitting there trying to figure out how I'm going to, you know, make them into something, I'm like, well, she kind of got the last laugh because she'd always say, oh, I should do some finishing, and then she'd do some stitching instead. So
Well, I think it's really neat that she did leave some pieces, because I enjoy seeing how you're finishing hers as well as yours.
right.
So
Yeah, and some beautiful things like she had quite a stack of them. So I feel like, you know, at first I felt like I had to get them all done right away. And then I'm like, that's just unrealistic.
yeah.
And so, you know, my goal is kind of, you know, maybe one a month if I can. And you just, you know, I have to wait for inspiration to
Yeah.
start too. Otherwise, it's too much of a chore. But, you know, I think, you know, she knew I would finish them. I mean, that was our last conversation. We went through, you know, all her projects and, you know, talked about them, and, you know, it just, yeah.
Well, and I'm sure it's also nice to go through each one, like one a month. You have memories, you know, with those pieces and stuff like that. So it's kind of nice to relive them, but also do it in moderation,
Right,
as well.
right.
So yeah.
And I have her stack of prairie schooler ornaments.
Oh,
She had quite a few that she had gotten done. And I think, you know, she has them trimmed. And if I'm thinking my husband will be gone 1 week. So I'm thinking I'll just like haul my sewing machine out in front of the TV and just, you know, go to town on them. And yeah, that was one of the last things she said. She's like, you know, I think if I hadn't gotten sick, I would have gotten all of them done. And I'm like, I have no doubt you would have gotten them done,
yeah.
just because that, you know, if she set her mind to something, she really, really could accomplish so much. So unbelievable talent.
Yeah, well, maybe you can kind of continue it on with the prairie schoolers and stitch what she wasn't able to finish and have a really amazing, memorable collection to put
Yeah,
out, which would be kind of
yeah,
nice.
I don't know. I mean, I remember, I think they started in '84, and so I don't even know how many years that would be. 30 some?
I'm not good with math.
20 plus,
It's coming out right now.
16, 36, 37, something like that. And I think she had over half.
Oh,
So
wow.
she had two she finished herself last year. So she had, and she has the tree. So, you know, she had the vision.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. It's, you know, those are the kinds of things that, yeah, I just, you know, when I see them, it's her. So,
Yep. Yep. That's amazing. That really is. We kind of touched on this a little bit in talking about it, but what do you enjoy most about stitching?
I just find it totally relaxing and zoning out, unless of course, you're on something that's, very complicated and you feel like a time crunch to get it done. But I'm never bored. And I think that's part of it. It's like, there's always something exciting and new to think about that you want to create. And it's just, it's a great hobby. I think, it's not like you can start learning relatively inexpensively. And then of course, we all know that that can change fast.
Yeah, most definitely.
But yeah, I remember thinking, oh, I'm just going to stitch with DMC and, Beta, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, little by little, you venture off that path as time goes on. And
and then it gets more and more expensive.
Yeah. But I really try to think, like, am I really going to have time to stitch this all? And I guess getting to the age I'm at, I'm like, I realize, like, you don't have years and years and years to get this all done. And so I think I'm starting to get a little bit choosier maybe. And
or priorities. Yeah.
Right. And, I do so much seasonal stuff that now I think I've been trying to, like, look at things that I could leave up year round more so. And so that, it's not like you're just constantly switching things out. I mean, I enjoy that too, but so many of the things that I started when I got back into it, there's 5 different versions of it for the year. And so then it's really like stitching 5 things, even though they go in the same frame or whatever. It's, a lot more work than if you're just stitching one of them.
Yeah. So I've discovered that too, because I'm a seasonal stitcher as well. And I like, I like to decorate for the different holidays and stuff. But it got to the point for me as well that I wanted stuff that I could keep up all year long. And I wanted heirlooms, to pass on to my daughters. So that's why I started stitching, samplers and larger pieces. But then trying to balance between stitching seasonally and then stitching, the heirloom pieces, it's a challenge.
Well, and that's a thing too. I feel like, when I used to just stitch on a Christmas stocking, I remember like being so stupid. The first one I did, I thought I could get it done, or a pretty good chunk of it. And
whip it out.
I'm like, I think I got like that much done. So, it's really kind of funny, but I do enjoy, like, I have to kind of force myself to try to work in smaller projects, because I'm like, I'll stitch one and be like, oh, no wonder people do these. It really gives you a sense of satisfaction because you can get it done so much quicker. So.
That is true. And that is true. The instant gratification, satisfaction. Yeah. We're going to get out of stitching a little bit and learn a little bit more about you. Okay. And the next question is, what's your favorite genre of book or movie?
For reading, I tend to gravitate towards like more fiction, but, a lot of stories that are set back during like World War II or that time period.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why I'm drawn to that, but I kind of am. I would say definitely fiction over nonfiction. I don't know. I like to
kind of anything that catches your eye.
Yeah. And I like stories that are mysteries that have a twist that I get to the end and it's like, oh, I didn't see that coming, which a lot of times that's very rare. So, but I don't know. I've gotten into more audiobooks, which it's great with stitching because you can do, 2 things at once. So, and when I was driving into work with commuting, it was, there'd be some days I'd get home and it's like, well, I want to listen to the end of this chapter. And I'm sitting in my car in the garage. Kind of crazy, but yeah. I, I can't, it's not like some people where a lot of times I can't even remember the names of the books that I've read, but then I'll read the little synopsis and I'm like, oh yeah, I've read this one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like some by like Jodi Picoult, or is it Picoult, I think. I always say her name wrong, but a lot of times she'll have interesting bit of a, like a social issue that she works into it, that makes you think about things in a different way.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, I'm kind of all over the board, I guess.
Hey,
So,
that's great because then you're never like without a book. You can just grab whatever.
right, right. And, like I used to love to go to the library. I do kind of miss that. I don't, I typically don't buy books, but I would love to go to the library and I'd come home with like a stack of this many when we'd be going up north or something. And my idea of a fun week was maybe to make it through 2 or 3 of them. So
Nice. Do you find it challenging to balance stitching and reading, or do you just basically do the audio books more so now to
yeah,
balance it?
I mostly do the
Yeah.
audio because then I can do both, and
Yep.
I'm really happy.
Because stitching's time consuming, but so is reading unless you're a
Right,
fast reader. So it's,
right.
audiobooks are just the perfect balance. So.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, there's something. I had a Kindle, and reading on a Kindle versus like reading a book, I didn't like that. I
Yeah.
like having the book in my hands, but I am okay with listening and stitching. So
Yeah. Yeah. There's something about just a book,
mhm.
and, a lot of, brick and mortar bookstores have been going out of business because everybody's going, online or whatever. But there's just something about having that book, in your hand.
Right.
Yeah. So the next one's a fun question as well. And it's, what fictional place would you most like to go?
This one I really struggled with when I was thinking about it because I'm like, I don't know. I should have watched other people and seen some of this or listened to some of the suggestions they came up with. I don't know. I guess there's so many like real places that I would like to go that I don't really think of fictional places. What were some of the things people came up with?
Hogwarts was a very, very popular one anywhere in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
That one I think was the most popular out of everything. A few people were Star Trek being on the Enterprise. There was quite a few to that. So, but I think those two were the most popular. Yeah.
Well, and then that would make sense why I would struggle with that because I never, I don't know. I just never got on the Harry Potter train. I started reading the first book on the way home from up north and I liked it, but I just never went back. And I think maybe my kids weren't the right ages to read them
Maybe, yeah.
with at the time. And so, and Star Trek, I don't really care for like sci-fi and that sort of thing that much, which is probably why I
Where,
like historical
where
things.
would you want to go then? Like a real place then, just out of curiosity.
I love like we've done a couple trips, Europe trips, and to get off the beaten path a little bit, where you can't necessarily, have someone speaking English to you or whatever. We were in Poland a couple years ago, and it just was, I don't know, parts of it reminded me of Wisconsin as far as landscape,
Oh,
but
wow.
it just was just really, I don't know, the thought of like somewhere having that kind of history and being in a place that's like 800 years old, a building or whatever, it's kind of mind blowing to me. So
Yeah.
I love the architecture and just even, I'll end up taking like pictures of a little design over a doorway or something like that. I don't know. I'm in awe of what was created so many years and years ago without, the modern tools that we have. So, and I guess, stitching follows along that line. I mean, you think of the beautiful pieces that were created, and the number of hours that people spent creating the masterpieces. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I never thought about it that way, comparing it to, older buildings and stuff like that, because, now we're reproducing samplers that are, hundreds of years old. So, yeah, that's amazing. So this is a fun one. If you could do anything for a day, what would it be?
It would be to spend it with my grandkids. There's just nothing more fun for me. And, I feel like we've done outdoor visits with them, but it just, they keep, my husband dropped off groceries for them today, and they were all like, when can we come and sleep overnight? And I'm like, oh. So that's been very, very hard. But
it's such a challenging time, and this kind of, the technology is nice to have to be able to see other people, but it's not the same as being together at all.
No, I and especially as we get colder here, it's like, I know the opportunities for social gatherings
outside,
I know one of my friends, we always have, and we've done this since our kids were little, but an ornament exchange. And so we're like trying to strategize, and it came down to someone has a heater in their garage, and they have a 3-car garage. So we're all going to dress like we're going to dress for being outside. And we're going to have the garage door opens with the heater on. And I'm like, okay, that, probably mask, and that's innovative. Like it'll work.
Yep, innovative, smart, and safe. So, and still get together. That's great. Yeah. So do you have any other hobbies besides cross stitch?
I love to garden, and not so much this last year, but I do like to entertain. I like cooking for like entertaining more so than cooking for the day-to-day grind. And I love to bake, although I try not to do that as much on a regular basis, because I know it's we'll end up eating the
here too
also. But I'm always I laugh because I don't know, I've had like a KitchenAid mixer for a number of years, and then I started making more decorated cutout cookies, and the recipe I had, the regular size KitchenAid really didn't handle it all that well. And so the one year for Christmas, my husband surprised me with the bigger one. And when we remodeled our kitchen, I have like a cupboard that I can have them sitting out, and yet the door's closed, so they're not right there. And when I got the second one, I'm like, well, I probably should get rid of the first one. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, why wouldn't I keep the smaller one too? And so I sent my sister a text, and I'm like, would it be crazy if I kept both of them? And she's like, is it crazy that you're even asking that question? Like, why would you keep both of them? And it's been a number of years now, and especially I used to have a big party in November, and so I'd be baking all these different things to throw in the freezer, and just having like multiple mixers going at once was really nice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's double duty right there.
Yeah.
I would keep both. I don't know.
Yeah, so I've never regretted that one. So
no, that's a great decision. So this is an interesting one. I'm curious how people answer this. It's, how would your friends describe you?
Probably trustworthy, or someone they can count on. I think if I commit to doing something, I'm gonna do it. I don't know, like I think, hardworking and willing to help out if someone needs helping out. I guess those are a lot of different words, but
But no, it makes sense. Those are all really good traits. Reliable, trustworthy. Those are all traits that I think I would definitely want in a friend. So
yeah, well, and I don't know. I like people who are happy people. Like, everyone has trials and tribulations in life, but I think, just being bitter about it, it's not going to change it. And,
right.
People gravitate towards happy people. So it's like, you can sit there feeling sorry for yourself, but at the end of the day, I don't know. I saw this one commercial one time where someone was walking through the hospital, and I don't even remember what it was for, but like as they walked by people, like different bubbles popped up with what problems the people had. And it just was like really interesting to me, because it's like, you look at, some people and you think they have the world, and, you don't necessarily know what's going on behind the scenes. So
Yep.
I guess that's another point. Like, I try to be kind, I mean, doesn't always work, but,
Yeah.
give people the benefit of the doubt, I think.
Yeah. Trying not to judge, the whole saying to not judge a book by its cover kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah.
And I even feel like, as much as I think I'm right about something, someone else might think their idea is right. And, if we all thought exactly the same, it'd be a pretty boring world.
It most definitely would be.
So, but, try to be respectful at least. And,
Yeah. I think that's what we need, especially right now in the world, is more compassionate, caring, kind people to kind of get us out of some of the ugliness that has happened. So, yeah.
I totally agree. I think, I don't know, you got to look at, it's not just your side. There's other sides that, are equally as valid. So.
Yep. 100%. Hopefully there'll be some changes coming. Hopefully.
Well, you just, I don't know. I'm just, this whole year has just been like one ugly thing after another. And so many things that just, it's just so sad to see, and it's like, I don't know, you just gotta bring out the kindness when you can. And sometimes it doesn't take that much. Just
be kind.
Something that's nice.
We had a very similar conversation in the interview that I did with Marlene as well. Is, we just need more kindness. So very, very hopeful.
Well, and I look at, some of the ways people, like strangers, reached out to me after we lost Leanne, and it was just like, they didn't know me. And, it touched my heart so much to think that, people would reach out that way. I just, it just meant so much to me. And yeah, you have, your friends who are also mourning this loss, and, the family members that can relate and everything. But it was so wonderful to see the stitching community, how much she touched so many people that she would have been blown away. So.
Our community is pretty amazing when it comes to rallying around, sadness or like a disaster that has happened. I've noticed that we have a pretty amazing community. So a lot of kind people. I think a lot of them that watch us as Flosstubers, they feel like they really get to know us and that we're friends, or I call my my viewers family, because you get close in conversations even though you may never meet. And so I think a lot of us felt very close to you and Leanne, and just wanting to reach out and let you know that we're here as a community. So
yeah, that was really, really special.
yeah, that Sal and how everybody just rallied around that. Just was amazing. It was absolutely.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially like as more and more people were jumping on board, I was
Yep.
just, and the
Big.
comments that they would write,
Yep.
yeah, kind of blew me away.
Yep. Gotta love our community for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna get back into stitching just a little bit. And this one is, how do you prefer to stitch? Do you use a hoop, a Q-snap, that kind of thing?
If the fabric is really, really floppy, I'll throw it in an old-fashioned spring-loaded, which I had one from, and I think it was probably my mom's from my grandma. And so it was always my worst fear that I was going to break it. And then one day I was at Goodwill and there was, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 of them. I'm like, taking these all.
Yep,
So
100%.
the air and the spares. But a lot of times if the fabric has more body to it, I won't use anything. And I think like if I'm stitching a lot of white stitches, sometimes I'll throw it in a hoop too, because I think my stitches are not pristine. Like I'm stitching to get to the end result, but I would never win a contest. When I'm
right there with you.
People, it's like, oh my gosh, it looks like it's from a machine or something. You couldn't. There's not one stitch that I could pick out that isn't perfect.
Oh wow.
That is not me. So and I definitely need magnification. So my mag eyes are part of my routine, and usually a light too. That really, every count that I've gone up. I mean, I remember moving from Ada to like 28 count and thinking, okay, I can. 28's okay. And then I tried 32 and it's like, and then like, 6 months later, you work on the project again and it's like, oh, this isn't bad. And, same thing with 36. It was like I was doing some darker fabric and I was having, a hard time with it. And then later on I stitched on a light color and it's like, oh. But then, I see people who are well into the 40s and it's like,
yeah, I don't know.
Well, I guess your framing costs would be a lot less, but I do my own anyway. So I feel like, someday if I ever create a masterpiece, I will spring for having it done professionally. But so far, none of my pieces are masterpieces.
Neither are mine. I do the same thing. You don't want to look at the backs of mine at all. Not at all. But I'm okay with it. So
I'm painting like frames. That's where I'll experiment with my colors, and then I just never get around to like painting the rest of it. And so, but it is kind of fun to see, like, oh yeah, I tried this and didn't like that at all. So. I remember the first ornament I finished, it was a hot mess. And then Leanne's like, well, maybe you could, she was so gracious how she phrased that, you could maybe, do this and that. And then, now I look at it, it's like, oh my gosh, so.
I do that with ornaments that I've like finished 2-3 years ago. And I'm like, what was I thinking?
Well, I remember trying to cut like foam core with a bread knife.
Oh.
It's like,
whoa,
it's not work well. So
no.
You just gotta, I think that's the thing. You just gotta figure out what works for you, because some people, like sticky boards. Some people like mat board. Whatever seems to be your.
And it's an evolving thing too. Right. Like you just continually learn new tutorials, your taste change, that kind of thing. So it's ever evolving.
Right, definitely.
So what can you not do without for your stitching? Like your favorite go-to must-have besides the basics?
Like a tool, or is that what?
Yeah, like a tool, or just something that, like, if you sat down and you stitched and had your, your thread and your floss and your linen or whatever, what else do you absolutely need?
It's my mag eyes are that's number one essential.
Yep.
Or I wouldn't see any of the holes. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
I couldn't exist without them.
Yeah, I'm right there with you because these, and you can see the reflection. It's really annoying. I'm trying to move my head, but these are bifocals, and I had to get bifocals because I needed to see stitching, but I'm fine seeing long distance. So it's the same for me. Some sort of,
Oh,
some sort
yeah.
of glasses to be able to see. So, yeah.
Well, and yeah, I actually have bifocal contacts, but I can't see as well with those as my like regular bifocal glasses. But even then, I'll put the big eyes over, and so then I'll watch TV out of the top part and then look down through the big eyes for
Yep.
the
That's what
stitch.
I do.
It works good.
It works great. Um, so this is kind of a fun one to see how people answer is, how do you decide on what you're going to work on next?
I'm so helter skelter all over the place. Like I I find like I don't even stay on one project in a night anymore. I'm like, oh, I'll do an hour in this one, and then it's like, oh, what else do I have in this basket? So I used to be really like just very monogamous and finish up one thing, and then once I broke out of that, it was just like, I don't know,
A
crazy.
whole new world. Yep.
Right. I try to like not impulse buy everything. Like, you'll see the new charts coming out and there'll be 5 of one designer that I love. And I just realistically know that I needed to narrow it down and choose one. And then sometimes I've found, like by the next year, 3 out of 5 don't even speak to me anymore because there's other, hot things that you want to work on.
Yep.
So I think sometimes, to give it a little time and just rein it in a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah. I've noticed the same thing. I actually, I had a hard time getting rid of charts, even ones that I've stitched. And so recently I made a D-stash account and I sold some, and then I had like this, I had this immediate panic attack because I didn't want to get rid of them. But I keep buying. And that's
Right.
the thing, like, 6 new releases just came out and I want them all. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, I don't know if I'm going to I won't even stitch them this year. So, or even next year maybe, but. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I found, or like I'll find something at Goodwill that I'll just know what I want to put on it, but then I can't find the chart.
Yeah.
So then, parts of me are like, well, I could take this part of this one and part of this one, and I kind of search for the exact right thing to put it on there. But those are the kind of projects that then I think, why are you doing that to yourself? Just something that exists and
Make it easy.
And in the color, like I find myself like changing up colors too often, and then it's like, you'll stitch a little bit and it's like, oh, I don't like that, so then you pull it out, and some of the things by the time I'm done, I couldn't even tell you what I used on it. And most times I really like how things are charted. It's just like there's just been a few things that, the colors just don't speak to me for what the season is or that sort of thing.
Yep. Or like you fall in love with a chart and you fall in love with the picture that's on the front of it, but when you pull the floss, they don't match. And that's where you try to, change colors to match that up. And then it turns into this whole, that's why I'm not a designer, because it turns into this whole huge thing of, trying to mix and match.
Yeah. I would love to spend a day with a designer and like watch their process. I would think, like some of them that are Flosstubers, we should suggest that, because like to me that's just so interesting. Like, like I'm a doodler, so like I'll be in a work meeting and I'll just be like, all of a sudden I look down and it's like, oh my gosh, I just have this little drawing on my page. So like to me it's like, is that how they start their process? Or I don't know. it's interesting.
Those are interesting things that you brought up. I might kind of see if I can integrate that into interviewing some of the designers. I don't think I've really done that yet, except for I interviewed Autumn Lane Stitchery and I asked some designer questions there, but I kind of like that because then we can learn a little more about their process and, you know, how they go through things and that kind of, I like that.
Oh, there you go. One of my coworkers, she was just laughing. She's like, I really think you should start an Instagram account for your doodles because she's like, it's just like always so interesting what you have on that page. And I'm like, yeah, some of the things, you know, like I'll do over and over again that are my standard patterns. But I always felt bad about it until I read that some people pay better attention
when they're doodling.
Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, that's better than sitting here yawning.
Maybe turn some of those doodles into some cross stitch chart. That would be fun. So we are down to the last question. Actually, I did kind of skip over one that we can probably talk about before we get to the last question. And it was the, where's your favorite place that you've traveled and did you bring stitching along when you went? We kind of talked about it a little bit, I think, when you were mentioning places that you've gone to, but if you wanted to kind of elaborate.
Yeah, I guess you know, because I've only gotten back into stitching the last couple of years. No, never took, we went to visit some friends, rented a condo in Key West for a couple, you know, like a month each winter. And so we went down there a couple times. So I did take stitching there and it was lovely sitting outside on the veranda, like stitching away. And, but they ended up actually moving down to Florida, a different part, and you know, and the condo got sold, so there will be no more stitching on that veranda. It was really relaxing. I can see, you know, like I could spend easily. I see like the 24 hours of cross stitch, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like some weekends I do that without even trying. Like to me, that's just. There's nothing more fun than just having a lot of time to stitch.
Yep, 100%. I don't really travel, but I take mine everywhere. If I have an appointment, you know, I'm stitching because you sit there and you wait. So why not just be productive? So, and you get a lot of people asking questions, not so much now, but, you know, before, you know, it's like, oh, what are you working on? Or what, you know, because a lot of people don't know what cross stitch is. So taking it everywhere is great.
Well, and I know even I used to do craft fairs when my kids were little. And so I would always take along, you know, body parts that I needed to stuff or whatever. And it was like interesting about, you know, people who would be interested in it or then want to try to help you. And sometimes that went over not so well, but
be productive while you wait or whatever you do. Okay, so now we're to the last question. And this is my most favorite of all, and I save it to the end in every interview. And it's, what's the best thing that has happened to you so far this year? It's a very challenging question.
This is a very challenging question for me this year because I look back on it and there's been so many like really awful things that have happened this year, like beyond any others in my lifetime. But I was trying to think of what good came out of it, and I think in some respects, the whole trying to do a floss tube on my own, that was not me. I was the kid who would be in the back of the class, never raising my hand, you know, always had something to say in my brain, but not being confident enough to say it out loud. And so when I first thought about doing floss tube by myself, you know, right away I thought, no, there's just no way. Because Leanne was always, you know, you'd give her an idea, she'd run with it, she'd figure out things. She took care of the whole, you know, production aspect of it. I, you know, I wasn't involved in that at all. But then like little by little, I kept getting like little notes from people saying, you know, we really miss you and we hope in time you'll come back. And so I guess that's probably been the one highlight, just feeling like people gave me the confidence to try it. And I realized how many, yeah, like little interactions you have with people you don't really know, but you do know. And how much I missed, you know, like that little back and forth with people, and just, you know, how much I enjoyed that. So I guess if, you know, anything good has come out of this whole mess, it's just that I feel like, you know, I was able to figure things out, and, you know, it wasn't pretty. And there's still times where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really a hot mess, you know, but, you know, I feel like for the most part, people are kind, or if they're not, I think, why are you sitting here watching something you don't enjoy? Like, just move on.
Yep, I agree. There are just a couple that just, you know, they have to leave that comment.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's, you know, I was excited for 2020 because I thought it was a cool number, but in hindsight, it's a struggle for things to say, oh, this is great, because there wasn't a lot of great. And, you know, I don't think on December 31st, everything's magically going to be wonderful either. So
no, I'm right there with you. It's not. I know people are hoping to, and it's good to have positive outlook, but I think it's going to take some time for sure.
right.
But I'm glad that you were able to, because you built confidence, and I'm glad that you came back. And I know a lot of people are very glad that you came back to the community and back to recording. I do my videos by myself, and I find it a challenge just to do videos by myself. And you're coming from, you know, having somebody that you can, you know, interact with and bounce things off of, to doing it by yourself. And that has to be a huge challenge in itself, you know, adjusting to that. But you're doing an amazing job, and you've got so much support and love from the community. And we just appreciate you, you know, making the videos and being willing to do this and to talk about Leanne and open up. I know a lot of people are really going to enjoy this and learning more about you and about your friendship, because you did amazing things for the stitching community, and you continue to do so. So we appreciate that.
Well, yeah, it just, that's the one thing that makes me sad is, you know, she didn't have more of a chance to leave her legacy, because she just, you know, oh my gosh, she was just so talented in so many areas.
She did though. She's still in the videos that are on your channel, but you continue to show her work. You continue to talk about her. You continue to finish her pieces and show us. So she has an amazing legacy, and you're continuing it. So,
and I do find, you know, at first, the first time I was gonna finish a pillow, and I had to watch the tutorial we made over, because I didn't remember all the steps. And when I first turned it on, I was just like, oh my gosh. And then, you know, it just became comforting, because it was like I was still laughing at the funny things she said, and when she would smile, I'd be sitting there smiling back at her. So I think, you know, what a gift that is for me to have those moments, because I mean, I think of, if it would have been any other friend, I would have no history like that of time spent together.
And you can still hear her voice. I think Marlene and I also talked about that in our interview, that she does these videos so that when, you know, when she's no longer here, that her friends and family can go watch these videos and see her and hear her, and, you know, still feel like you're connecting. And so you have that, and we have that, even though, you know, we weren't close with Leanne, but.
Well, and that's the thing that I think, you know, like most people had no clue how sick she was. And, you know, there were a couple times where I vividly remember this lady leaving a comment about, you know, all you did was laugh your first, you know, 10 minutes in about stupid stuff, you know, I'm out of here or something like that. And I thought, you know, if you only knew like what this person is facing. And, you know, very rarely do we delete comments, but like, I don't know, somebody else then said, oh yeah, me too, or something like that. And Leanne, I get a text from her and she's like, I'm deleting those. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead, you know. But it just shows that you don't know what people are facing.
Well, yeah, and that goes back to what we said earlier. Don't judge a book by its cover. You don't know what's going on in somebody else's life unless they full disclosure it. So, yeah, it just goes back to kindness. I'm telling you. Just
my little tagline, fill the world with love.
Yeah, exactly. That is an amazing tagline, and more people should, you know, take notice of that for sure. But you have those videos and those memories and those cross-stitch pieces, and you're carrying her on in your memories, in these videos that you're making, and you're carrying her on for all of us too. So it's pretty amazing.
I feel like it
really is.
It helps me feel like she's still around me to do it. Yep. So
yeah, she is. She is. All those pieces that she left, charts, whatever, they're all filled with love. So you have some great memories. So it's pretty amazing. Just want to thank you so much for, you know, taking time out of your day to do this interview and to talk with me and be so flexible in your scheduling, and to be so open and upfront with everything, with talking about your friendship and everything like that. And I appreciate it. And I know all the viewers will appreciate it too. So thank you so much.
Well, it was fun. I really enjoyed talking with you and feel honored to have been asked.
I feel honored to be talking to you. So, all right. So we'll say bye to everybody on Flosstube.
Bye.